Watching high stakes players make sick hero calls is exciting and fun. But what does actually go into making a decision to put your whole stack on the line with a marginal hand? Today we are looking into 3 examples of jaw-dropping hero calls and explain what is going on in these hands. In this hand we see Ivan opening the button and calling the 3-bet against Wiktor Malinowski in the big blind. Being around 60 big blinds deep effectively, both guys plays a standard as we can see in this custom simulation made in Simple Preflop. On the flop, Wiktor's range is clearly ahead of Ivan's. He has many more overpairs in his range as the button should 4-bet most of them pre-flop, even though he is supposed to trap some high pocket pairs due to the shallower stack size. Because of this range advantage, the big blind can bet his entire range on the slow flop, which doesn't improve many of the button's holdings. With aces, a smaller sizing is preferred by Piosolver, which is also Wiktor's choice. And against the small sizing, Ivan is allowed to call basically anything except some unconnected high cards without some backdoor equity, so pocket threes is indeed a correct call. The turn now changes things quite a bit. Since many of the button's flop calls are connected around the 5 and the 7, the 6 improves Ivan's range more than it does Wiktor's. Nonetheless, the button still has a lot of backdoor flush draw floats in his range. So while Wiktor's lower overpairs like 8s, 9s, 10s and also jacks like to keep betting and protect from these overcards hitting their outs, higher pocket pairs like queens, kings and especially aces are less concerned with protection. They profit much more from letting Ivan's bluffing region take a stab at the turn. And what applies to Wiktor's 8s through jacks is also true for Ivan's low pair hands. As Wiktor has some unconnected overcards in his turn checking range, a hand like pocket threes profits a lot from just folding them out by betting and not giving them the chance to suck out on the river for free. And as a bonus, he is also getting called by worse hands, which are Wiktor's higher ace high holdings, like ace king, ace queen and even ace jack. Contrary to jacks through kings, aces, and especially the ace of hearts, are again not too concerned with protection and can simply check call the turn. This keeps the button's bluffs in and can potentially bring a profit by them bluffing the river. So what did just happen? Well, on the king, the big blind can actually implement a donk betting strategy. As we can see, aces are a hand which does want to go for it for some amount of the time. Basically, Wiktor's donk shoving range is built of aces and 8-9 as value bets and 10-9 and 10-8 as bluffs, which did want to check call the turn, having nut equity as well as overcard outs against lower pairs. What both aces and 8-9 have in common is that they block a lot of the button's supposed bluffs. That means they'd rather get their value from betting and being called. And with the fact in mind that the big blind's range is this polarized, pocket threes is still a fold. But at least it is close, and maybe it doesn't look as crazy as initially. After all, Wiktor only needs to add a little more bluff combos and or a little less value combos than necessary to his donk shoving range, and the call would already be profitable. In the next hand we see Makeboifin battle Pokerkluka. On the flop, we already see a check call by Makeboifin that might not be super intuitive, but is actually approved by the solver. The button's preflop and c-betting range is just so wide that Jack 10 with a spade has enough equity to call a small c-bet. Similar thing on the turn. Check calling Jack high against a 75% barrel is not a play that is considered standard in most spots. But again, the button simply has so many worse hands in his barreling range that Jack 10 is a clear call according to GTO. And if you're thinking the river can't be a call as well, especially against an overbet, you are actually right. It's not. But it's not as clear as one might think. In fact, Jack 10 is actually one of the best bluff raising hands. For calling, the jack of spades is better because it blocks more of the button's value hands and less of his bluffs. And if you're wondering if Luke's pocket deuces were played GTO, the answer is yeah, kind of. The flop bet is completely approved, the turn is preferred to be checked back with a spade, but is bet to some frequency, and the difference in EV is very small. On the river though, the most preferred sizing for his range and also for the pocket deuces combo is a smaller size bet, like 75% in this example, instead of an overbet. But if he chooses to only have an overbet sizing, his combo is bet more often than not. The reason why low pocket pairs like deuces and threes want to barrel through on the board like this is basically that they are better bluffs than ace high. Since ace high blocks some of the big blind's most frequent check folds on the river, it is much more likely that Makeboifin folds when Luke has deuces and threes instead of ace high. Also, betting them on the turn has multiple benefits. You fold out many hands that have 6 or more outs against your hand. At the same time, you'll get called by hands that you are actually ahead of. And additionally, you make sure that you'll still have bluffs in your range in cases when the board runs out in a way that completes every draw. This might not be relevant in lower stakes, but is definitely something that would be picked up by these world-class players if it were not the case. As we could see, knowing what is going on in the hand completely depends on the ranges that are in play. So knowing which hand you and your opponents play pre-flop and arrive at the flop with is the key to having clarity throughout the hand. Button versus big blind is the most frequent spot you will be in a cash game. And to give you the chance to master it, you can now have a set of pre-solved button versus big blind GTO ranges sent to you for free. Simply click on the link in the description and have your ranges sent to you within minutes. In the next hand, two of the most feared cash game players in the world are taking on each other in a blind battle. So in this hand we're witnessing Stefan's aggressiveness and big sizings, which he is very well known for. For Linus, 9-8 is a pure call on the flop. His value raising range consists of 9s with better kickers and 9x combos which don't block flush draws, so that Stefan will have more hands to call with. It is added by a bluffing range that mostly consists of straight and flush draws and backdoor flush draws. He should be facing a check quite often on the turn and correctly checks back 9-8 with a heart. His betting range should be built relatively polar, consisting of mostly full houses and flushes for value. As bluffs, he will have flush draws and low equity hands like gutshot straight draws or even raw ace highs. On the river 3, he should again face a check more often than a bet. Trip 9s is clearly good enough to value bet. The worst hands that the solver is betting for value are top pairs with a kicker as low as a 4. Now the small blind should have been slow playing quite a lot of strong hands, including full houses and flushes. Having a full house blocks your opponent's pairs and trips, so you'll gain more by letting him bluff. Of course, Stefan can also easily have a weak pair like a jack or a 3, which would have had a chance of winning at showdown, but is now being turned into a bluff. When facing this 11x overbet raise, we can see that 8-9 is actually right on the edge, but having a heart makes Linus's hand a call in 50% of the time. At this point, 8-9 is a pure bluff catcher, since no worse hand would shove for this sizing in Stefan's shoes. So 8-9's benefit is that it blocks a lot of full houses, and having a heart helps block at least some flush combos which Stefan might play this way. But this time, he simply has it. Queen deuce of hearts is frequently bet on the flop and can be checked on the turn, although it slightly prefers betting. On the river, going for a check raise is completely in line with the GTO strategy. However, Piosolver would prefer check raising to a smaller sizing if given the choice. But Stefan might also just choose to have only one check raise sizing in this spot. And if that is a shove, queen deuce is put into that range. Not following the GTO strategy can be a mistake, but at the same time there can also just be an intentional and exploitative reason behind it. After all, even on this level of play, deviating from GTO can be heavily profitable. Find out everything about it in this video.